I don't have much time left. My hands are still working, but judging by how the spots are spreading, I need to write quickly. If you are reading this, it means you have come here to my apartment and found this notebook. Perhaps you ran here from another city. Perhaps you were being pursued by a creature and ran into the first apartment you came across. Mine. The door to which I had thoughtfully left open. Take whatever you want, food. If it won't spoil, clothes, dishes, I don't mind. I won't need them soon. I ask you for one thing. If you see me or Allah not lying where we should be, on the floor, please stop us. Allah is unlikely to get up, but I might. I first saw him on Tuesday. I was walking to work at the factory in the morning, and he was moving toward me. Moving is the best description because walking is difficult to apply to his unsteady, ragged, mechanical gait. He wasn't exactly a homeless person. More like a vagrant, the kind you see in all big cities. Hitchhikers and beggars with backpacks and caps for small change, which they say is for the road to Altai. They play guitars in underpasses, sometimes sleep on benches, and are between 20 and 35 years old. They are sometimes accompanied by girls, usually young and tanned, with clean faces and a thirst for adventure. I would have guessed him to be about 20, judging by his clothes. A huge hoodie pulled over his head, baggy pants, and the peak of a cap sticking out from under the hood. He moved slowly and weakly. The huge backpack seemed to weigh him down, sometimes pressing down on his back, sometimes pulling his body backward. When he was about 4 meters away from me, he raised his head and stared at me with a cloudy gaze. And then I realized that the guy was dead. First, his eyes were cloudy, glassy, and dull. If you've ever had a cat die, you know those dried-out eyes that are no longer moistened by dead tear glands. Second, he looked much older. His skin was a distinct yellow color. If you've ever been to a meat market and seen a pig's head, you know that color. The third was purple lips. They were senselessly open, the lower one hanging down, revealing a row of uneven teeth. When we drew level, I was hit by a wave of stench coming from the guy. A mixture of old sweat, alcohol, urine, and rotten meat. If you've ever forgotten cutlets on the stove, well, I automatically recoiled from him and quickened my pace. I turned around. Everyone was giving him a wide berth, their faces contorted in disgust. So I wasn't the only one who saw him, which was very important. I forgot about the guy until evening. What was there to think about? A thought flashed through my mind. A junkie, high jaundiced. I did the right thing by stepping away. God forbid I catch something. And I forgot about it until the end of the workday. Did I mention that I work as an engineer? I think it's worth noting. My hands work, and I'll tell you everything quickly. I realized this when I started writing. Anyway, I'm not a writer who can convey the whole range of feelings and thoughts on paper, but I'm not a dumb alcoholic either, just so you know. It's important to tell it like it is and not get into arguments. So, I'm a mechanical engineer. I work at a factory that manufactures agricultural machinery, tractors, combine harvesters. I get paid well and I like my job. I guess I'm lucky. It's not often you get to work in your chosen field for 12 years and be happy. By the way, my name is Nikolai. You can find my passport details in the documents in the bottom drawer of my desk, if anyone needs them. I don't have a wife or children. I had a girlfriend, Jenya, but she left me 2 years ago. Since then, the only person close to me is my sister. Forgive me, little one. I held you in my arms 22 years ago, changed your diapers, fed you. When your mother's period started, I became almost like a mother to you. Now you're lying here and I look at your leg, and it seems to me that it's moving. I can't kill you a second time. I have to do everything faster. So, here's what happened. I first saw the creature on Tuesday morning and forgot about it until evening. When I left work, it was already dark. It gets dark early in the fall. I live not far from the factory and always walk home. My route took me through a park alley, which was almost deserted at that hour. I walked slowly, breathing in the damp air. Rare streetlights illuminated small patches of the alley, revealing a few benches in the darkness. All of them were empty except for one. A woman was sitting there. I could tell by her long hair and shiny jacket. She was sitting hunched over, her hair covering her face. I slowed down and, hesitating, approached her. Her posture suggested that she was unwell. I needed to assist her, perhaps call for medical assistance. I stopped and addressed her. "Are you feeling unwell? Would you like me to call an ambulance?" She raised her head. That moment replays in my head like a scene from a movie. A dark alley in a park, a circle of light, two people in that circle like on a stage, and she slowly raises her head. Even now, a 35-year-old man, I remember that moment with a shudder. For the second time that day, I was staring at the wax mask of a dead person. Bulging, cloudy, swamp-colored eyes, skin already covered in places with purplish-blue spots, a slightly swollen face, blue lips like dumplings. For a few endless seconds, she parted those terrifying lips. Her voice came from somewhere deep in her chest, hoarse and gurgling, as if she were speaking for the first time after a very long silence. I turned abruptly and walked away from her. My back was cold and stiff as a board. My legs barely obeyed me. I walked slowly, gradually quickening my pace. Then I heard movement behind me and the click of heels. I spun around. She was standing near the bench with her head down. After a moment's hesitation, I walked on, faster now. The heels clicked again, faster with each passing second. I ran and heard her running after me. The exit from the park was not at the end of the alley. I had to pass the now-closed amusement rides and turn right. I ran toward the rides, gasping for breath. The terribly loud footsteps behind me still seemed to be just a couple of meters away. When the distance between us decreased, I turned sharply to the left and dove into the shadow of the Ferris wheel. The footsteps behind me fell silent. I turned around. She was nowhere to be seen. The nearest streetlight was about 7 meters away, illuminating the area quite brightly but hiding me in thick shadows. Bent over, I breed convulsively. I should have quit smoking and started running in the mornings 10 years ago. Now it was too late. I stood with my hands on my knees, spitting on the ground. I didn't know where the dead woman had gone. I just wasn't thinking about it at that moment. Finally, I caught my breath and straightened up. Fear began to creep back in, freezing my knees. I was sure that if I turned around, I would see her behind me, like in a cheesy horror movie. I had nothing to use as a weapon except a set of keys. I clenched it in my fist and spun around. Of course, there was no one behind me. I turned and looked for the way out of the park. The gate was open, and beyond it was a road with occasional cars passing by. Almost calmed down, I quickly moved toward the exit. About 5 meters from the gate, I stopped abruptly and froze. She was standing behind a tree to the left of the exit, her patent leather jacket glistening in the light of a street lamp. We stood there for about 10 seconds, staring at each other. More accurately, I was staring at her because I couldn't follow her gaze. During those seconds, I got a good look at her. Judging by her clothes, she wasn't a homeless person or a drug addict. A nice jacket, high leather boots, a short denim skirt, black hair. She looked to be about 20 years old. She stood motionless, her head bowed. It seemed to me that she was looking at me from under her eyelashes. But I wasn't sure. We stood there, motionless, waiting for the other to make the first move. I'm sure she could have stood there until morning, but I couldn't. Gathering myself, I suddenly took off toward the open gate, aiming to the right, a little further away from her. She didn't move until we were level. Then she jerked forward and grabbed my jacket. I twisted away and kicked her in the stomach. She flew back, waving her arms, and fell somewhere in the bushes. I didn't wait for her to get up and ran away. I ran all the way home, unable to stop myself. Already in the stairwell, running up the stairs to my second floor, I felt a burning sensation in my hand. Slowing down, I looked at my wrist and froze. There was a pretty deep scratch near my thumb. I began to feverishly recall what had happened and realized that she had scratched me when I hit her in the stomach. I entered the house feeling as if I had been sentenced to death. I already understood what this girl was and what she wanted from me. Of course, it wasn't a bite, but who knows, it was corpse poison, which she was saturated with like a sponge. First, I washed my hands with soap, then treated the wound with hydrogen peroxide and generously applied green paint. pouring it directly into the wound. The chemical burn didn't scare me. Something else scared me. I took a hot shower and, just in case, threw all my clothes, including my jacket, into the washing machine. I poured myself some tea and began to analyze the situation. You understand, it's very difficult to understand and accept that you've encountered something supernatural. I repeat, the thought of a living dead person makes you feel ashamed of yourself, as if you've been caught doing something indecent. Well, unless you're 15, of course. I'm 35, so I started to think, if the guy in the morning really could have been a yellow-skinned junkie, how could you explain the situation with the girl? Even if you chalked up her dead face to the play of light and shadow in a dark park, how could you understand her behavior? Why did she run after me? Why did she wait at the gate? A fragile 20-year-old girl against a big grown man? No normal thought crossed my mind. Now I think back to 5 days ago and am not surprised by my naivety. Yes, I couldn't believe it. Who could? Who would immediately recognize a werewolf in a huge dog? Or an alien in a naked freak? Until the very end, they will be nothing more than a huge dog and a freak to us. That's how our brain works. Thousands of processes occur every second in the gray matter, all aimed at keeping our world together and preventing it from falling apart. At the right moment, you don't notice something, you make an association, you replace one memory with another. The slightest glitch and you're crazy. I got distracted. It's getting harder to write. My hands feel wooden. The color. It's disgusting to look at. I need to finish quickly, and you don't need my ramblings anyway. Anyway, you get the picture of how I first met them 5 days ago. Then it got much worse. On Wednesday, I saw 5 of them. One, in a strict suit, was sitting on a bench with a newspaper. People walked by, quickening their pace, as if not noticing his bald head covered with mold. However, I passed by the same way. Then there was a girl near a cigarette stand, a little boy with a backpack, a fat woman on the bus, and an old woman on a bench near my apartment building. I noticed that they looked worse than yesterday. The signs of decay were more visible. Their movements were slower. I don't know and can't know the reason for what happened, but I think it's some kind of virus that turns the living into the dead, bypassing the moment of death itself. All the zombies I met clearly didn't climb out of their graves. Maybe they don't even realize they're dead? On Thursday, I went to work, but after lunch I called in sick and went home. The problem was with the lips of the cafeteria worker Luba, who fell into the soup of the person standing in front of me. I quickly left the line and headed for the exit. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed people chewing as if nothing had happened. Now they were everywhere. Salespeople in the supermarket, mothers with strollers, workers on the road. They were about 10% of the normal population, but people didn't react to the creatures. How should they have reacted? They were calm and didn't attack. Someone had to make the first move, but it wasn't going to be us. How do you imagine that? Run out into the street with a shotgun and start killing them? What if that didn't stop them? What if the virus spread faster? Better to wait, maybe the government will take action. Maybe they already have, they're just not telling us to avoid panic. On Friday, I didn't leave the house. It was unbearable to see them, smell them, and pretend that nothing had happened. I called work and said I was sick, but when I heard the gurgling voice of Marina, one of my coworkers, I couldn't take it and hung up. I spent the whole day in a daze, flipping through channels looking for news, but I didn't hear anything useful. In the evening, it was as if I had been struck by lightning. Sister. Oh my God. Sister. I rushed to call her, but she didn't answer. Of course, it was Friday evening. Could she really not notice anything? What if something had happened to her? I called her probably 50 times, but she didn't call back until midnight. Kolya, what happened? I was at the club. I almost had a heart attack when I saw your missed calls. I breathed a sigh of relief. Her voice was still clear and high-pitched. I cautiously asked if she had noticed anything strange. She replied something like, no. I asked her to come over tomorrow and bring me some medicine, saying I was sick. I just had to see her, make sure everything was okay, tell her about the danger she somehow didn't see. Yeah, right, as if we can see anything beyond our own noses until we bump into it head-on. Today she came. I opened the door for her, and my heart sank. She was standing in the doorway, my dear little girl, with her short, bright haircut and torn jeans. And she was dead. The worst thing was that she didn't seem to realize it herself. My sister hugged me with one arm, enveloping me in a wave of stench, and squeezed past, waving a bag with something sweet in it. I took a few moments to recover, listening to her chatter from the room. I noticed that her voice was almost the same, but there was still a hoarseness in the high notes. I entered the room, and I hardly remember anything that happened after that. I remember her cloudy eyes, which had turned from blue to almost white, her half-rotten ear, from which an earring fell out at one point, leaving a strip of torn skin behind. I remember shouting something to her, and she shouted back, about my hallucinations, about my mother's illness, about the doctors. Maybe I should have listened to her, returned to the world of illusion, closed my eyes to everything, if I hadn't seen her cracked blue lips right in front of me, her piercing surrounded by mold, her cloudy eyes, her torn ear, and her pointed, foreign nose. I remember how I went into the kitchen. She rushed after me. I grabbed a hammer and, it's time. The scratch that creature in the park gave me has already spread the infection. I looked in the mirror and saw my face changing color. My fingers were already dry and yellow, and it was getting harder to write. I found the pills my mother used to take before she threw herself out of the window. They were expired 5 years ago, but that didn't matter. It was even better that way. Besides, there were a lot of them. The door was open. I was writing in the kitchen so I could see Alla. I thought I saw her move, but I wasn't sure. Her head was a mess. She was unlikely to get up now. Zombies are alive as long as they have brains, right? I ask one thing, if you come here and I come out to meet you, the hammer is on the table. Do it, stop me. I'm not a hero who will save the world from zombies. I'm just one of thousands of victims who wander in a crowd in search of the protein found in the brains of the living. It's time I'm taking the pills. I took them. Nothing is happening yet, but I feel my legs getting cold. My vision is slightly blurry. It's very difficult to write, very difficult. My hands won't listen to me. I accidentally saw the mirror. It's strange. The pills must be working. I'm starting to hallucinate. In the mirror, I look normal, just pale. And my sister's leg is normal. I know it's because of the pills. The gray matter is dying.